The reception line snaked around the yacht club's main ballroom like an elegant parade of Boston's political and business elite. My brother Daniel stood proudly beside his new wife Catherine, both beaming as they greeted senators, federal judges, and tech moguls who'd flown in specifically for their wedding celebration. Next we have Congressman Bradley and his wife, the wedding coordinator announced smoothly, managing the introductions with practiced precision. I waited my turn, 3 people behind them, adjusting the simple black sheath dress I'd chosen for the occasion. Catherine had insisted on classic elegance for family attire, which translated to expensive simplicity that still somehow made me look underdressed compared to her sorority sisters in their designer cocktail dresses. "Should we introduce Sophie next?" the coordinator asked Catherine quietly, gesturing toward me. Catherine's smile never wavered, but her voice carried clearly over the chamber music. "No one needs to meet the single sister. Let's keep the focus on meaningful connections tonight." The coordinator nodded professionally and moved on to Daniel's college roommate, now a successful venture capitalist. I remained in place, watching Boston's power players shake hands and exchange business cards while I became invisible background scenery. Mom appeared at my elbow with champagne and her usual disappointed expression. "Well, at least you're not drawing attention to yourself tonight," she said, surveying my modest appearance with faint approval. "Catherine's family has such important connections. We can't afford any distractions." The family narrative had been established for years. Daniel was the golden child, Harvard Law, federal prosecutor, now married to Catherine Pemberton, whose father served as senior counsel to 3 Fortune 500 companies. I was the puzzle piece that didn't fit, the sister who'd wasted her MIT education on some obscure consulting work that required constant international travel and paid mysteriously well for someone with no visible career trajectory. Sophie had such potential, Dad regularly told his law partners, but she got sidetracked by these freelance projects instead of building a real career like Daniel. What they didn't know was that my freelance consulting involved serving as senior economic advisor to the British Prime Minister's trade delegation, managing post-Brexit economic relationships with North America. My international travel included G7 summits and bilateral negotiations that shaped billions in trade agreements. My obscure work had earned me recognition as one of the youngest economic strategists in modern British government. My encrypted phone vibrated with a priority message. "Dr. Chin, PM requesting final briefing before tomorrow's state dinner. New developments require immediate economic impact assessment." I glanced around the reception, calculating logistics. Tomorrow's state dinner would host the British Prime Minister's official visit to Boston, including meetings with the governor, mayor, and key business leaders. Several of tonight's wedding guests would be attending as representatives of Massachusetts's tech and biotech industries. Through the ballroom's floor-to-ceiling windows, I noticed increased security activity on the harbor. 2 Coast Guard vessels had positioned themselves near the yacht club, and men in dark suits spoke into earpieces while scanning the crowd through binoculars. "Sophie," Daniel called out cheerfully, spotting me near the reception line. "Come meet Catherine's uncle. He's senior partner at Pemberton Walsh & Associates. Maybe he has some consulting opportunities for you." I watched my brother's perfect wedding celebration, where every introduction was calculated for maximum networking value and I was deemed unworthy of inclusion. Catherine's father held court near the champagne station, regaling listeners with stories of his latest corporate merger victories. The yacht club's event manager approached Catherine with obvious concern. "Mrs. Chin, we have a situation developing outside. Additional security personnel are requesting access to the venue." Catherine's smile faltered as she processed the unexpected security concerns. "What kind of situation?" "This is a private wedding reception." The event manager consulted his radio then leaned closer. "They're asking for someone named Dr. Sophie Chin. They have British government credentials and are requesting immediate access." Every conversation in the immediate vicinity stopped as heads turned toward where I stood by the dessert station. The wedding party's elegant networking dissolved into confused murmurs as guests tried to understand why foreign government officials would be seeking someone who hadn't even been introduced in the reception line. Dad stepped forward with obvious irritation. "That's my daughter Sophie, but there must be some mistake. She does freelance consulting work. Nothing that would involve foreign governments." Through the ballroom's main entrance, a formal security detail appeared, 6 individuals in diplomatic attire, led by a woman whose bearing immediately marked her as someone accustomed to international authority. The yacht club's private security looked completely overwhelmed. Catherine grabbed Daniel's arm, her wedding composure cracking. "What is happening? Why are British officials disrupting our reception?" The lead figure approached our family group with purposeful strides. "Dr. Chin? I'm Deputy Chief of Staff Margaret Thornberry from the Prime Minister's Economic Council. We have urgent trade developments requiring your immediate assessment." The ballroom fell completely silent. 300 guests in their formal attire stood frozen, champagne glasses suspended, as they watched this senior British official treat their excluded single sister as someone of obvious international importance. "I'm sorry," Catherine stammered, her voice rising with each word, "but there's clearly been a massive error. This is Sophie. She lives in a studio apartment in Cambridge. She does random consulting projects. She doesn't even have a proper career." Deputy Chief Thornberry consulted her secure tablet with professional efficiency. Dr. Chin completed her doctorate in international economics at Oxford, serves as senior economic advisor to the Prime Minister's trade delegation, and has been architecting post-Brexit economic policy for the past 4 years. Her work on the US-UK digital trade framework was particularly crucial. The Pemberton family patriarch approached, his corporate lawyer instincts activated. "Trade frameworks? What kind of trade frameworks?" Dr. Chin designed the economic models for approximately $68 billion in annual US-UK commerce, Thornberry replied matter-of-factly. Her Brexit transition strategies protected thousands of jobs in both Massachusetts and Greater London. Mom's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "Sophie designed economic policy? But she said she did consulting work for small businesses." Dr. Chen's cover identity is standard protocol for senior economic advisors, Thornberry explained patiently. Her reported circumstances provide operational security during sensitive international negotiations. Daniel stepped forward, his federal prosecutor confidence evaporating. "Cover identity? Sophie, what is she talking about?" Before I could respond, a second British official approached, someone I recognized as Treasury Minister James Whitfield. The Yacht Club Society guests whispered frantically as they tried to identify these obviously important figures who'd crashed their exclusive celebration. "Dr. Chin," Minister Whitfield called across the room. "The PM sends his regards about tomorrow's automotive sector agreements. We have the revised tariff calculations you requested." Catherine looked between me and the British officials, her perfect wedding narrative collapsing in real time. "Sophie, if this is all true, why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were just unsuccessful?" "Just what, Catherine?" I asked quietly. "Someone not worth introducing to your important connections? Someone too irrelevant for the reception line?" The British delegation observed this family drama with diplomatic interest. Several wedding guests included federal judges and congressional representatives who would be attending tomorrow's state dinner. Word of tonight's revelation would reach Washington within hours. "The briefing materials," Thornberry said, presenting a leather portfolio marked with official government seals that everyone in the ballroom could clearly observe. I accepted the portfolio, and its weight seemed to physically shift the power dynamics throughout the room. Every guest could see the classification markings, the ministerial seals, the unmistakable evidence of genuine governmental authority. "Sophie," Dad said desperately, "we should discuss this privately. As a family." "Actually," I replied, checking my secure device, "the Prime Minister is expecting my economic assessment within 2 hours. The US-UK relationship can't wait for family conversations." Daniel's perfect wedding reception had transformed into something entirely different. A stage where his irrelevant sister was revealed as someone who shaped economic policy affecting both nations. "We'll need secure communications facilities for the briefing," Deputy Chief Thornberry informed the yacht club manager, who nodded frantically while clearly having no idea how to accommodate British government requirements. As we moved toward the club's business center, the Canadian Trade Minister arrived in a separate diplomatic vehicle, her security detail coordinating with the existing British presence. Wedding guests pressed against the ballroom windows, trying to witness this unprecedented transformation of a society wedding into an international economic summit. "Sophie, wait. Catherine intercepted us in the hallway, her designer gown rustling with desperation. "This is my wedding reception. You can't just take over my entire celebration." Treasury Minister Whitfield paused, his diplomatic training evident in how he navigated family conflicts. "Dr. Chen, if this wedding celebration requires your attention, we can certainly reschedule the Prime Minister's briefing." The offer hung in the elegant corridor like an economic ultimatum. 4 years of being dismissed as unsuccessful, 4 years of being excluded from meaningful family introductions, 4 years of watching my accomplishments get minimized while Daniel's career advancement was celebrated. "No rescheduling necessary, Minister," I replied in the crisp academic tone I used for parliamentary briefings. "My professional obligations to 2 nations take precedence over social events." Dad stepped forward desperately. "Sophie, darling, we've always supported your academic pursuits. We just didn't realize the full scope of your governmental influence." "You realized exactly what you chose to acknowledge," I interrupted. "You realized that I was too irrelevant to introduce to Catherine's important connections. You realized that my work wasn't worth mentioning to federal judges and congressional representatives." The Canadian Trade Minister checked her secure device. "Dr. Chen, Ottawa is requesting your assessment of the trilateral automotive agreements. The Finance Minister needs our joint recommendation before tomorrow's state dinner." Catherine's father approached with obvious political calculation. "Dr. Chen, the Pemberton family has extensive experience with international trade law. Perhaps we could discuss future collaboration opportunities." "Mr. Pemberton," Thornberry interjected diplomatically, "Dr. Chen's economic portfolio is entirely committed through the next fiscal year. Brexit implementation requires her complete focus." Catherine's face crumpled as she realized her perfect wedding was being overshadowed by the sister-in-law she deemed unworthy of introduction. But tonight was supposed to be about celebrating Daniel and me. Minister Whitfield consulted his governmental schedule. "The briefing will require approximately 2 hours. Dr. Chen will need direct communication with Downing Street, the Treasury and the Bank of England." I nodded with professional authority, then addressed my family with cool finality. "Please, don't let international economic obligations disrupt Catherine's celebration. Continue with the reception as planned." The dismissal was absolute and publicly devastating. In front of Boston's most influential political and business circles, I'd just relegated my own family to background noise while conducting economic policy work that affected millions of jobs across 3 nations. As the British and Canadian delegations followed me toward the secure facilities, I heard Daniel pleading with Thornberry. "Surely there must be some way the family could be briefed on these developments? We have legal experience, government connections." Thornberry's response was diplomatically crushing. "Dr. Chen's economic briefings are classified at cabinet level. Personal family relationships are not factors in governmental security clearances." The business center door closed behind us, leaving my family to face their wedding guests' questions about how they'd managed to exclude their own family member while she was actually designing economic policy for 3 governments. Resolution: 200 to 400 words. The trilateral trade agreements were finalized 8 hours later, with economic frameworks I'd designed protecting over 200,000 jobs across Massachusetts, Ontario, and Greater London. The Prime Minister's state dinner featured my policy work as the centerpiece achievement of US-UK economic cooperation. My family's calls started before the morning news coverage ended. Daniel, Catherine, Mom, Dad, even Pemberton family members, all desperately trying to reconnect with their newly discovered governmental insider. Every call went directly to voicemail. The Treasury offered me the Chief Economic Advisor position with expanded authority over all North American trade relationships. I accepted before leaving the British consulate. During my final week in Boston, I received an elaborate invitation to a family celebration dinner at the Pemberton estate to properly honor Sophie's extraordinary economic achievements, according to the embossed letterhead. I declined with professional courtesy, citing transition obligations to the new governmental role. Instead, I spent my farewell evening with Deputy Chief Thornberry and Minister Whitfield, reviewing implementation strategies for the next phase of post-Brexit economic partnership. Meaningful work with colleagues who'd valued my expertise from our first collaboration. Catherine appeared at my Cambridge apartment the night before my relocation to London, her wedding makeup replaced by desperate tears. "Sophie, please. I know we made terrible mistakes, but we're still family. You can't just leave us completely behind." "I'm not leaving anyone behind," I replied with quiet certainty. "I'm accepting a promotion to Chief Economic Advisor. Something you never thought I was qualified to achieve." She stood in my doorway, her Pemberton wedding ring catching the light, finally understanding that her irrelevant sister-in-law was walking away permanently. Not from anger or revenge, but with the confident expertise of someone who'd found her rightful place in international economic policy. The Treasury transport arrived precisely at 6 the next morning. As we drove toward Logan Airport, I didn't look back at the Boston skyline. I had 3 governments depending on my economic analysis, and professional relationships that finally matched my actual qualifications. The reception line had concluded exactly as intended, with everyone properly introduced according to their true governmental importance.